Wow.
Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke, so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. Before we get started, I need to see if this is actually working. So I have to go over and wait on my YouTube page to make sure that this looks like I'm actually waving my hand as opposed to like stop motion animation. So far, so good. There's a bit of a delay, so it's weird watching me kind of in the past a few moments, but it's still doing what it's supposed to be doing. But is it me, or does it look like a little out of focus for everyone? Like it's not very high def. What do other people see? Is it like just my YouTube, or is it actually what you guys see? It's not very crisp. And if that's the case, I have no idea how to fix it. So just let me know in the comments, but it still looks like it's working. Right. And then I have a cat come in and chew on a cord. Yeah, Lynn, ever so slightly out of focus. I don't know how to fix that. Because on my OBS, it looks fine. You see, I'm running into this tech problem. You don't see my layout, but I have like two monitors here. One is right in front of me, and that's where when I'm playing videos or looking at tweets and news articles, it's right in front of me, and that's why you get a lot of eye contact or facing forward when I'm going over that stuff. But to the monitor over here where I'm pointing, but you guys can't see, I have my OBS, which I use to actually stream through. And that's where I get to control things like this. It has all of my different scenes, as they're called. And so this is the one that I primarily have forward, like on top of all the other things. And it also tells me if my audio is working and things of that sort. But then right behind it, because I don't want to make them too small so I don't have to like search for, options and stuff. I have my YouTube Studio showing. And then I have a second tab open, which is my actual YouTube live stream. And so when I'm usually working in OBS, this is covered up. The part of it where it's playing, I can see the chat, but the screen that it's playing in is covered up by the OBS tab. And I don't know, so sometimes I don't see the image, the video as it's going through. And recently I had some severe problems with it freezing every few seconds. So another thing that I'm doing this round, and hopefully it works, is apparently on OBS, you can stream and record at the same time. And so the recording is actually going to be what I see on the OBS screen, which is nice and crisp and clear and all that sort of stuff. But I think what happened was I have a warning on my YouTube Studio saying the stream's current bit rate is lower than recommended bit rate. And so what I had done is I had gone into OBS to adjust that bit rate after Googling how to do that. And I think That is what caused the problem way back when. And so about 5 live streams ago, I think that's what caused the problem. So I've switched that bit right back, but now I'm getting the warning again saying that it's off. And so I don't know if that's what's causing it to be a bit fuzzy or not. Because I have a strong internet connection. Like it says, I have an excellent internet connection and all that sort of stuff. But I really don't know what else to do to make it like a little bit more in focus on the actual YouTube stream. And if something goes wrong with the video, I really need you guys to start screaming it in chat, because like I said, I can see the chat, but I don't see the YouTube video as I'm going along. Let's see if people are... Like, the nice thing about it being slightly out of focus is, you know, it hides some of the the stuff going on in my face. So it's not like I need it to be high def or anything, but I do kind of want it to be a bit crisper than what it is. It's a bit annoying. So if anybody knows how to fix that particular thing, can you let me know? Because my OBS screen is super crisp and clear and stuff. And I would like that to be showing on my YouTube stream. Let's see if anybody else is... So it did clear up. I think if some people, like, I don't know, if I like refresh the screen, you might hear an echo for a second. No, I refreshed it and it's still a bit fuzzy for me. Yep, Looney Tunes. I'll be mentioning why there was no Sunday stream in just a moment. I just really want to make sure the tech is working first. So if it's clear enough, I don't know how the other YouTubers do it, how their streams come in so much crisper than mine. One of these days I'll hopefully figure it out. I do plan on keeping these Sunday shows Grand Theft Auto Bot. So thank you to everyone who's already in chat. I really appreciate you guys coming out. So, let's see, Sunday. I was still recovering. I had a bit of an episode last week. And this is where I get into some dilemma with you guys of how much do I share? Because I want to be open and honest with my mental health, because I want other people to feel like they can be open and honest with their mental health, and it's things that I feel like need to be talked about. But at the same time, I don't want all of you feeling like you're somehow, I wouldn't say responsible for me, but feel, I don't know what the word is, but I don't want you guys to worry about me. It is my problem that I have to deal with. And the reason why I don't necessarily want to share too much is there's nothing you guys can do. And so I don't want to burden you with that. I don't want anybody worrying about that. But I did have a very severe episode on Thursday. But I contacted a friend and he came over because I was not feeling safe. And I'm still recovering from that. And again, I don't know how much to share because I don't want you guys feeling like you're my therapist. You know, I don't want this to come across like therapy sessions. I'm here to get the progressive message out, to talk about the news, not talk about me. You know, this isn't about me. It's about changing the system. So basically what had happened is my milk spilt, as I use my milk analogy for it. Something that shouldn't have been a big deal happened, and that was the thing that was just kind of too much, and it caused me to break pretty severely. And chances are I probably shouldn't even be on now. Like, I think I feel fine, but it comes and goes in waves. So I guess, like, part of it is I posted the one video that I did before that breakdown where I was talking about my mental health and how it could become even more tricky as this month went on, which it did. It's not because, you know, when I say things like that, like it's going to get worse and stuff like that, people think that I'm somehow, I've been accused of like emotionally blackmailing people before because I can foresee where my mood will go. But there's an anniversary this month that I have a really rough time with, and it was just an accumulation of a whole bunch of different things hitting at the same time. But I posted that other video where I was talking about my mental health, and I saw a lot of the comments. So to let people know a few things, I am medicated. I do believe in medication, you know, for some extent, to some extent. It can be very helpful in some instances. The dose I'm on actually pretty much shocks the doctors when they see it for the first time. But it was prescribed to me by a psychologist at that high level dose. So I am medicated. I have done a ton of therapy over my life. Back when I could afford it and back when things were covered. Can I go see a therapist now? No, I don't have the money. And a lot of the clinics that are covered, the walk-in clinics for therapy, which are on a shoestring budget by the province, because mental health is not considered the same as physical health here in Canada. They don't accept people if they think they're in crisis. I know this because back 10 years ago when I went through my major episode and I nearly ended things, it was on me to try to seek help afterwards. And I had a lot of these support clinics reject me at that time because I was in crisis as far as they were concerned. Because a lot of these free walk-in clinics type thing, they're meant for people who need some life coaching. You know, they just lost a job, or they're broken up over a ended relationship, or it's just something very temporary and they just need help getting through it, maybe finding some direction. That's what a lot of these walk-in clinics are designed for. They're not designed for people like me. And so then that leaves a few options. Going to the hospital. I've done that before in the past lots of times too. It's not helpful for me anymore because what happens is, who looks after my cats? How long will I be there? And then you're taking me away from my environment where I can find things that soothe me. And all they do when you're in the hospital is watch you sit there. So that's not much. But the reason why nobody can help, like the reason why I'm also not necessarily seeking talk therapy right now, is that's not the problem. You know, it's the problem is the environment I'm in, the society I'm in, which is not something any one person can solve. Like some basic things that would need to happen is I would need to magically be able to publish my book. I would need to, you know, not have to worry about housing, not have to worry about, you know, if I lose this apartment, where am I going to go? How am I going to afford things? You know, not constantly worried that I'm going to lose my disability support payments or that they get clawed back with all the stuff that's happening in Canada with the different levels of government looking after that. I would need to be accepted in society as is, not having people wanting to kill me because I'm non-binary. There are all these added levels of what this society is when it comes to capitalism and neoliberalism and what it's done to us and separated us so we're no longer a community. That is causing the crux of a lot of my depression. So, yeah, and just my mind is just backtracking a bit. The other major thing is my body image issue. I absolutely despise my body. And since I haven't been able to go out on my walks for a while, which is not good for my mental health, I've been putting on a little bit of weight, which is detrimental to my mental health. So I'm probably going to go out for a walk later on tonight, no matter what it does to my foot, because I need to. And it's snowing, and I love the snow. So I don't want to get too much more into it here, but what I am going to do, because this reminded me of a segment I saw on Democracy Now! A long time ago, and I had to search it, about a man who has suffered through depression and stuff, and he's an author, and he has the privilege of writing a book on things that I already knew. Because I've mentioned it before when talking about mental health. It always frustrates me when a lot of these experts often have no personal experience with it, say all this stuff without actually talking to people who can articulate what they're going through. So I'm going to save the rest of the mental health talk for tomorrow at 5 p.m. This way too, for people who can't deal with talk of severe mental health issues and suicide, it's going to be separate from this stream. And we'll go over the Democracy Now! Clip and some other things and talk about the difficulties about getting help here in Canada. I was thinking of possibly adding it to this one, except it's actually like a full-length interview on Democracy Now! There's 2 of them. One is 11 minutes, and then the second half of it is 44 minutes. And I feel it's important to go through all of it because what he does say in it is very helpful in having people understand that a lot of the times the depressions people are feeling, it's out of our hands. We're just reacting. This is a symptom of the environment we're in. And medication can't solve this. It can help in some instances. Like, again, I'm not anti-med. Talk therapy can help in some instances. But the emphasis is always put on those things because, they're money machines. Whereas the things that would need to happen in society to actually lessen the stress of people, to help people with their mental health, would not help the capitalist system. In fact, it would go right against what the capitalist system is. So, things like building community with each other, going out, touching grass, things of that sort. A lot of these professionals don't really talk about that too much. So tomorrow at 5 p.m., I'll be going over the Democracy Now! Clips and some other tidbits of things, articles and stuff that I've come across about mental health, so that the focus of today's show is just getting to some of the news that I had wanted to get to. And part of the reason why I want to be here now doing this is because I want to be here. I enjoy making videos. I enjoy, trying to get that progressive message out there. I enjoy the thought of helping people change, of reaching people, of educating people, of bringing new perspectives into the mix and all of that sort of stuff. Like when I first started making videos, I despised it. But then I started to enjoy making videos, and the more I do live streams, the better I'm feeling about them, to the point that the last live stream, I'm like, you know what, maybe I'll add a Thursday live stream in because there's so much news. And then I totally crashed and burned when I found out the last 5 live streams were freezing every few seconds. That just kind of clawed me back a bit. So I have to kind of try to pull myself back up from that, because it gets blown out of proportion in my head, and it just makes me feel like a failure that I can't even do these simple things, and that, normally I do check live streams afterwards to make sure that they're working and stuff, and I didn't do it. I didn't go back to them. But hopefully now I'm streaming and recording on OBS, so should anything go wrong with the actual live stream, I have the video that I can post and I can clip from and everything of that sort. So with all of that said, I'll check the chat. Also, yeah, when I talk about things like mental health, especially when I use the word suicide, a lot of these things will be demonetized. I also have a little ad button over here in that YouTube studio, which I can use. I'm supposed to click on it. I'm supposed to remember to do that. I'm ADHD, so I never remember to do that. So I'm not really making any money off of these. So if you can, super chats are a great way to support. And it's one of those things that ideally I don't want super chats. I'd rather people do one-off donations through PayPal, which is linked below. But I do get the feeling that if I get super chats, that if I were to hit that ad button more often, then YouTube would be a little bit more favorable in whose feeds this live stream would show up in. So it's a bit of a, yeah, I hate ads on the internet in general. So I'm going to hold off as long as I can without remembering hitting that add button for all of you. So if you can, please support my content by becoming a patron, which is linked below. Again, I don't have the YouTube membership yet because YouTube takes a really big chunk of it. Patreon takes a bit less. The same with the PayPal one-off payments. They take a lot less than what YouTube takes. But again, it still helps to get those super chats because then YouTube likes me better. And I have an Amazon wish list, which has things that can help build my studio, help with my art, help with my cats. And there's just some nice little treats on there that, if you guys want to express something, then that's a good way to do it if you just have a little bit of cash. But by no means do that. Like, I feel weird getting gifts from people. I really do. So it's there if you have like this overwhelming desire to do so, but by no means feel like you need to. It's weird. It's weird. It's like Sam Cedar today saying it's his birthday and all the gifts and stuff. And, I've been, I've sent a gift to them, which was the portrait of Michael way back when. So I'm not against doing it. Like I sent Dan Evans a print of a portrait of Michael for his birthday one year. Back when I had a little bit more money and I could do that because I like to express my appreciation for content creators that have, helped to inspire me. So I understand the desire. I just feel really weird being on the other end of that. So, I will go back and check some of the chat. Oh yeah, do the whole liking and sharing and all that sort of stuff too. Yeah, so, because I know some people have been staggering in. Yeah, if anybody knows how I can get a little bit more in focus on the live stream, I'd appreciate it. Although it does hide my wrinkles and my white hair, as is. Well, actually, a lot of the makeup and the lighting does that too. So, Lynn, personally, as someone with my own mental health issues, I trust that you have your in real life strategies and resources and people who you know how to reach out to. Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I don't necessarily want to share how it got really bad, but I still reached out. So, but again, I might talk more about that tomorrow when I'm doing the mental health live stream. Hunger Games 1989 wasn't last Tuesday your anniversary, or was that 2 weeks ago? I will always worry about you, but as someone who struggles with mental health, I understand what you're saying. The anniversary of my show is November 1st. I did that intentionally so that it would be easy for me to remember. Just have it on the 1st of a month. Yeah, it's one of the things with the mental health. I'll either get through it or I won't. And it is an illness. Yeah. And some of it is out of my control. Some of it is in my control. So I deal with what is in my control when I can. Yeah. And like I was saying, I'm not against medication. I'm not against talk therapy. I just know they help me to maintain, but they're not going to solve my problems. BKK, you'll feel better after, but do be cautious with your foot, Sandy. Yeah, I've been trying to do like foot exercises that the doctor recommended and stuff, because it's this thing on the bottom of your heel which can get inflamed, and apparently it's an issue for a lot of people. And it's just taking a really long time for my body to kind of get over it. So there's foot exercises I can do to try to help strengthen my foot with it and stuff. And since it's icy out, I'll have like these cleat things on the bottom of my shoes, so it might actually help with the impact, lessen the impact a little bit more. So, like, we should all get an ad blog and then promote the idea of ads, pay up YouTube. There are ways. I am. One of these days, I'm going to do that full out rant about ads, but I don't know if I'm going to do it live or if it's actually better off if I do it like a scripted video essay style. Grand Theft Autobot targeted ads are ticking me off right now. I looked into something, decided I wasn't interested after all, and now that thing won't stop inundating me with ads. Yeah, it's a problem. What was it? They were talking about, it was really weird. Like they were talking about something on the Majority Report, and then suddenly I was seeing YouTube videos about that subject or something. It's, yeah. Or like this one time I was watching a DVD of The Dark Knight. Um, just because I have a lot of physical copies of movies. And then the first thing I see on my YouTube recommends is the movie of The Dark Knight to rent or buy. Sometimes there's just way too many coincidences, even though those aren't supposed to be connected. Ooh, in talking about interesting coincidences, yesterday I sent out a tweet because this just kind of I thought was really fun. I'm rewatching all of Star Trek Next Generation, and I was on this episode called Up the Ladder. And in that episode, They were talking about these spaceships that launched a long, long time ago. November 27th of 2123. And I'm like, wow, that is weird because it was November 27th of 2023. I just thought that was super weird and, you know, kind of a wild coincidence to happen. It was fun. Yes, Cat K. I'm going to be having a stream on mental health tomorrow. I'm trying, so now that I'm kind of done explaining what happened on Sunday, I'm going to leave the rest of the mental health talk to that stream so that people who are sensitive around that subject, you don't have to worry about it too much in the rest of this stream where I'm just talking about news and things of that sort. It is super dry in here. Wow. Okay. And I'm just going to check to make sure I'm still not freezing on my YouTube page. Okay. Anyway, on with the news. And I think we'll start with
Today in Canadian news.
I really love that. I really do. We're going to start with Canadian news. Many of you have probably remember videos. I know a lot of the leftists were talking about it. There was an explosion on the Rainbow Bridge. You know, bridges have gone woke here in Canada and the U.S. border crossings. The Rainbow Bridge. And there was all this talk and speculation as to what that could be. And I was hoping to cover this a lot sooner. But as you can see, things got delayed. So a lot of people aren't talking about it anymore because it's a moot issue because it was not a terrorist attack, as it turns out, just an impatient driver trying to get to a Kiss concert and American that was trying to get to Canada but then turned around, so it looked like he was from Canada going to the United States when it wasn't, because there was a lot of conjecture happening when it first happened. And it led to some interesting things here in Canada. So we'll start with, oh, I need to put my little earphone in for this because I'm going to need to listen to this. Oh, I can get rid of that content warning on there. Although the way the guy was driving might as well have been that. So, this was one of the first kind of newscasts about it, where it's really important what this reporter says right around here.
A very fluid situation. The law enforcement officials I've been speaking to here in Washington say it's too soon to say much of anything about this. But as you mentioned, our colleagues Tom Winter and Jonathan Dietz have reported the important initial finding that there was no car bomb inside this vehicle. The vehicle approached from the Canada side to the U.S. border checkpoint at a high rate of speed, as you said, and caused a pretty large explosion, which is why there was a lot of speculation initially that there may have been a car bomb. But again, our reporting is that there was no evidence of a car bomb. What remains to be known is whether this was an intentional act or an accident of some sort, a medical emergency. All these kinds of scenarios are possible. What's been clear from the people I've been talking to is they're not ready to even use the word terrorism in connection with this incident. They just say there is no evidence to support that. Nonetheless, they are being vigilant and investigating. I was also...
So that's the important part there. Go back a few seconds.
No evidence to support that. Nonetheless, they are being vigilant.
Go back
They're not
a few
ready
seconds.
to even use the word terrorism in connection with...
Yeah, because it was an explosion on the Rainbow Bridge, the woke border crossing. And to immediately jump to the conclusion that it was a terrorist attack without any evidence suggesting that, let's face it, if you do that, you're just trying to scare people, trying to rile people up. So it's very, oh, darn it, what's the word? Not unprofessional, but very not careful. Very, there's a word for this that I want specifically because I'm autistic and I want specific words. So it's very... I'll let you know when I remember that word. Yeah, well, it's not appropriate, for one thing, to just jump to that conclusion.
This is a very serious situation at the Niagara border. A vehicle blew up on the Rainbow Bridge. We're still talking to
Prime
the
Minister
authorities
Justin
about
Trudeau.
it, and the Americans, our border service officers, the RCMP, and so on. I was contacted by the Minister of Public Safety. We're trying to gather all the information. We're providing
Irresponsible. That's the word. Sorry. It's very irresponsible to just launch into saying it's a terrorist attack.
support. We're talking to the
Ah.
Americans. I can confirm that the border has been closed down at the Queenstown, Peace, Rainbow, and another bridge. Additional security measures are being brought to all border crossings all across the country. It's a very serious situation, but we will remain engaged for the entire day.
Honorable Leader of the
You see, that's kind of the more appropriate response, to say, we don't know what's happening. These are some of the facts that we know. We're not ruling anything out, but we're not also jumping to conclusions. So one thing Justin Trudeau is good at is performative politics, and he plays this role, like I said, very well. So he did the right thing in this case. However,
the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we've just heard media reports of a terrorist attack and
Pierre Poilievre, sadly probably the future Prime Minister of Canada.
Terrorist attack and explosion at the Niagara crossing of the Canada-U.S. border. At least two people are dead. One.
You see, he has to say the border crossing because he doesn't want to say the Rainbow Bridge. It's too woke for him to say that.
Is injured. It is the principal responsibility of government to protect the people. Can the Prime Minister give us an update on what he knows and what action plan he will immediately implement to bring home security for our people?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
And then Justin Trudeau says that he's going to go off for, a briefing, a security briefing, which Pierre Poilievre doesn't have security clearance. He's refused to, a lot of the conservatives and right-wingers say he can get security clearance. He's just choosing not to for some reason, because if he could get that security clearance, then he would know that this was not a terrorist attack. But he wasn't the only one to jump to conclusions. Fox News also had jumped to conclusions. The serves pointed out that the Libs of TikTok, Chaya Rychek, took time out of getting bomb threats called into children's hospitals to spread a conspiracy theory that there was a terrorist attack on the U.S. when it turns out it was a guy on his way to see a KISS concert who crashed. And they were saying, we just had an attempted terrorist attack on U.S. soil. This comes from just a few days after the FBI director, Wray, confirmed the border crisis poses major homeland security threat. Yeah, the border crisis between Canada and the United States. It's a huge border crisis happening there. Here's the thing. A lot of the illegal, or not illegal, a lot of the undocumented people in the United States are Canadians who have overstayed their visas. And they usually go in, they drive or they take a plane and that sort of thing. When it comes to people just crossing the border on foot, it's more often than not Americans walking up to Canada. Not exactly a crisis. Well, it is a crisis. It's unfortunate that people feel like they need to do that because they do that in the winter when they're not prepared for it. And there's some unfortunate consequences with that. So Fox News, Chaya Rychek, all saying, oh, it's a terrorist, when it wasn't. And that led to this exchange between Pierre Polyev and a reporter. It comes in around
It's caused two.
this mark. So this is an exchange. Pierre, or PP, as we like to call him up here. This is something he's so proud of. He's posted to his Twitter feed.
He did something that has never been done in the history of trade. That Trudeau's ideological obsession with taxing working class people, seniors, and suffering families has come ahead of what should have been a free trade agreement. Thank you.
Okay, next question.
Okay,
Hi,
here's
Paula
where it
Larizio with
starts.
the Canadian Press. Et si vous pouviez répondre dans les deux langues officielles, je l'apprécierais beaucoup. Do you think it was responsible for you to call yesterday's explosion by the by the checkpoint at the Rainbow Bridge terrorism when no U.S. or Canadian officials said that was or authorities said that was the case, and when the New York governor also said there was no evidence to suggest terrorism activity?
Actually, you're
So there's the question. Was it irresponsible to say it's a terrorist attack without hearing it from officials? That was the question.
wrong. You're a CP? Okay, so CP, by the way,
Terrorism, the checkpoint at the Rainbow Bridge terrorism when no U.S. or Canadian officials said that was or authorities said that was the case, and when the New York governor also said there was no evidence to suggest terrorism activity.
actually, you're wrong. You're a CP? Okay, so CP, by the way, CP, just for everyone's knowledge, did have to make 3 corrections for falsehoods that they put into a single article. I think that might be unprecedented. I'm actually thinking about checking with the Guinness Book of World Records to see if there's ever been a news agency that has had to issue 3 corrections for patent falsehoods that they admit they had been made in one single article, and now you've made it.
What a smug asshole. Like, seriously. First of all, he's not answering the question. Instead, he's just attacking the press. And he does it in such a condescending, smug-ass way, accusing them of having, faulty information, when he blatantly lies all the time. Lies that have been checked and double-checked, and it's well known. He just flat out lies. But what about that time that this news agency that's connected somehow to your news agency, because a lot of the Canadian news agencies are connected through a lot of the same networks and stuff of that sort. But, so therefore they're all guilty by association. When one person gets it wrong, the whole media is at fault. And how dare you say anything towards me that doesn't help make me look good? Well, nothing can really help him look good at this point, but.
Yet another falsehood in your question. Where you are wrong is that CTV reported that the government of Canada was presuming that the incident was terrorist.
So he said CTV reported that it was a terrorist incident. Remember that now. CTV is the most watched news network in Canada. So he said that they reported it was a terrorist attack. He used those words. They reported it was a terrorist attack.
So, yeah, that's what I said in my remarks. You're right. It was a media report.
That wasn't the question, though. She had asked him, was it irresponsible to call it a terrorist attack when no authorities, nobody from the government or anything said it was? There was just some media report from Fox News was saying it. But he singled out CTV.
Which is what I said. In the House, I said there are media reports. What kind of statement? I didn't. I said there were media reports. No, there's no distinction.
And here the reporter is probably left a little like, seriously, dude, what the fuck? That's not what I was asking. I was asking something completely different. And he's like, no, it's not different. It's all the same.
What I said, and I was right, was that there were media reports of a terror-related event. By your admission, there were media reports of a terror-related event. And that media report, according to CTV, unless you're questioning their integrity now, came from security officials in the Trudeau government. So do you think the CTV was irresponsible?
Did not come from security officials in the Trudeau government.
In putting out that tweet?
So now he's turning it back saying, well, wasn't CTV irresponsible for sending out that tweet? This is just gaslighting 101. Because the reporter does kind of, you don't hear too much more from her because I think she's a bit lost at words because it's trying to figure out in the moment how to respond to something. And then there could be some truth to what he's saying with some news articles having to retract something that they've said. And so it's kind of like having her question her own judgment in that moment. But he's lying to do it. This is just gaslighting. This is an abuse tactic. This is what abusers do to people. They gaslight them. They get them to question their own, reality, their own situations of what's going on and that sort of thing. And he is doing this to her, which is just wholly inappropriate. Like, if there is one thing I wish we could force all politicians to do, is simply they're not allowed to lie. That's it. They're not allowed to lie. Not in any of their advertisements, not in any of their platforms, not when they're talking about other party leaders. They are simply not allowed to lie. And I need to change the screen I'm on, because this one looks a lot better than that one. The other one's made for YouTube videos. This one is more for just flat screen stuff.
Sorry, I'm asking, and I have already answered that. Do you think CTV was irresponsible to put that tweet out? Well, you just did comment. Okay. So, I just hope you're not going to print something that you have to apologize for again.
Okay.
Like, just, again, the smugness and the condescension coming from his voice with all of this, his attitude. Many, many people who have been in abusive relationships have been spoken to like that. With this sense of authority as they're lying to you, telling you that you're wrong about something that you're not wrong about. And it's gross that the potential future leader of the country is allowed to get away with this. And not only is he allowed to get away with it, but you have other conservatives kind of applauding him for the way he handled her. Melissa Lantsman at a press conference announcing our common sense conservative plan to keep Canadians safe from the rise of hate and terror in our streets. Canadian mainstream media doubled down on false premises. Torque does questions like this one. Trust in media is low, and this is another example of why. The reporter said nothing wrong. She said nothing wrong. Andrew Scheer, former leader of the Conservative Party, when biased journalists try doing the Liberals' dirty work, they should at least get their facts straight. If they can't do that, they can at least bring some apples with them. I'm not entirely sure what the apples are in reference to. I have no idea what the apples are in reference to. But here's Andrew Scheer trying to tie it in with, you can't trust them, they're biased, they're all this sort of stuff. This is why the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, was, pointed out by them, because they're government funded, which has always been the case, regardless of who's in power. And yeah, media outlets are biased to the status quo, the establishment. And somebody else at least says, hey, Andrew, why you're promoting Pierre's lies? The journalist has the facts. Pierre is telling tales. Yeah. She wasn't doing the Liberals' dirty work. She wasn't lying. She was asking a question of, was it irresponsible to say that it was a terrorist attack before knowing for sure? Now, here is something that T-Dot resident also pointed out. Remember what I said earlier about the CTV news. So Pierre Poilievre just went on a rant at his press conference where he claims that CTV news tweet was the source of his terrorist reports. But he made those statements in Parliament before the CTV report was posted on their site or the tweet was made. So here you can see the timestamp down there, November 22nd, and this is him in the House saying media reports are saying it's a terrorist attack. And then here you can see the timestamp there, and Canada operating under assumption, Rainbow Bridge vehicle explosion, terror-related sources. They could have worded that better by simply saying they're not ruling it out, as opposed to saying it's the assumption. But then that goes against what a lot of other people were saying, like U.S. officials say no indication Rainbow Bridge vehicle explosion was a terrorist attack after Canadian caution. And that came out from CTV News at 2:39. So let's see. And here's a little audio summary that T-Dot resident also made.
The FBI indicated the 56-year-old man from the area. He lives in a very upscale island, and that's not far away.
A terrorist attack.
Who had intended to go to the KISS concert, which was canceled, then changed his plans to a casino where he spent some time.
A terrorist attack.
And then leaves the casino and then drives at a high rate of speed along this road in Niagara Falls, hits the divider, goes airborne, as the governor said, and lands in an explosion. Authorities believe he was in the car with his wife.
A terrorist attack.
This was a Bentley two-door Excelsior X. This is a car that goes for about $300,000 new.
A terrorist attack.
So it does not, as Matt Maragula from the FBI indicated, the special agent in charge in Buffalo, who runs the Joint Terrorism Task Force up there, does not have any of the earmarks of terrorism.
A terrorist attack.
It looks much more, as they have been able to go backwards through it, like a terrible accident.
And if Pierre Poilievre could get the security briefings and the intelligence on that, then he would know that there was no indication that it was a terrorist attack. But he doesn't have that security clearance for some reason. And if we go back, so we even have, so this news clip from this morning's breakfast television captures the recklessness of Pierre Poilievre at the CPC headquarters. His reaction last week was straight out of Republican playbook.
The only outlet that was reporting a terrorist attack at that time was Fox News. I know that because I was on it like everyone else.
So apparently this guy usually leans a lot more conservative, and even he's had it.
So Pierre Poilievre got up in question period and cited this report. Now, the next day, in an exchange with a Canadian press reporter, he was asked if that was appropriate for a member of the official opposition to just toss around media reports when really Justin Trudeau and his cabinet were learning on the fly what was going on here. And the exchange was fascinating.
Do you think it was responsible
And then we saw that.
officials?
Actually, just for everyone's note, ended correction.
Of addressing and right there, that question was asked. Instead of addressing the question itself, it goes on to attack the agency, being CP, which Canadian press, if you don't know, they fuel a lot of stories here throughout the country with amazing journalists who vet everything.
It was aggressive in a way that isn't appealing when you're thinking about leadership and you're thinking about dissent and you're thinking about conversations that need to have.
If that gets under your skin, are you kidding me? As a GTA voter, didn't like it. We'll see where we go from here.
Yeah, it's just like, I have no doubt Pierre would have acted the same if that reporter had been a man. But doing that, it had that extra level of like a misogynistic undertone, the way that he treated that reporter in that moment, the way he talked down to her, the way that he gaslit her. It had a lot of that dynamic going on. But it's entirely possible he would have talked to a man reporter like that. We'll never know in that instance, but, you know, there's unfortunately going to be more instances of this sort of thing happening. But let's just remember. So here's another tweet from T.Resident that caught my eye saying, Pierre Poilievre really hates Doug Ford. But Doug Ford is conservative. Why would you say that? Because Pierre Poilievre is lying again. After 8 years of Trudeau, Ontario food banks are seeing over 5 million visits a year. He's not worth the cost. Sign up to help me fix Trudeau has broken whatever. Yeah, Justin Trudeau, that's not his jurisdiction. That falls on the Ontario government, which is Doug Ford right now, but Pierre is putting the blame on Justin, which is another abuse, a tactic that is often used, where misdirected blame. And a lot of people believe this because most Canadians are not plugged into how Canadian politics works and what falls under where and things of that sort. But this is, when you say Ontario food banks, that's a good indication that maybe this is Ontario responsibility as opposed to saying Canadian food banks. That's a good indication of where that falls. But he just, again, Pierre Poilievre lies. He lied about the CBC. Well, he didn't lie about the CBC being funded by the government, but he pointed it out like this was this horrid thing. But if you go to the Wikipedia page of CBC, you see that it is government funded. So he's lying about how they're funded or why they're funded and what that does. And it's just all these little things that any one of them you can brush off. You know, you can say, oh, well, I miscommunicated that one thing, or okay, so I was a little bit off on that, or, you know, I embellished a little bit on this one thing. And you can do that to almost all of the things that he says. But when you put it all together, you get an abuser. You get somebody who is intentionally misleading and hurting people. And again, another reminder of he likes to sell himself as working class, you know, and unfortunately it is working. And a lot of the middle class and unions are supporting his conservative government over the NDP. In 6 months, Pierre Poilievre billed taxpayers $3,374,573.49 in expenses, averaging over $550,000 a month. While talking about food banks and living in a taxpayer-funded home, his expenses could cover caviar. We need integrity, actions, and words to align. Who is Pierre Poilievre and where's the common sense agenda? So basically, he gets over $18,000 per day. What he gets in a day is more than I get on disability in a year. He is a career politician. That has been his life. He got his pension in his early 30s. He's not one of the people. It's him just having this fake persona out there. Again, another abuser tactic to trick people into believing he's something he's not. And it's working. It is working. From Polling Canada, you can see here the lines. So for the Americans watching, our conservatives, like your Republicans, our liberals, are like your corporate Democrats. However, our conservatives are blue and our liberals are red, which is the opposite of you guys, which confuses the hell out of me as someone who's dyslexic. So when you see this line go down, that's the liberals line going down. And when you see the blue line going up, that's the conservative line going up. And you can see that looks pretty kind of like people are fleeing the liberals to go to the conservatives. Now, every election out there, the liberals like to try to scaremonger, NDP voters saying, or blaming NDP voters for, not voting for them, which led to conservative governments and stuff like that. Whereas you can clearly see it's liberals fleeing the Liberal Party and voting conservative. Because you can see that here with another updated 388 Canada federal model. Let's see, the CPC. So if there was an election right now, they would win in a landslide, which is a scary thought. But they're up 89 seats, and the Liberals are down 89 seats. Now, my math is not the greatest, but you can kind of maybe see where the Liberal voters are going. It's not the NDP that is propping up conservatives or not voting Liberal or switching from Liberal to NDP. That's not the problem. The NDP is actually pretty stagnant. They don't do anything, which is a problem with the NDP. And one that was updated a little bit more. Okay, so there was a slight change with, over a day, but we're in very terrifying territory if there were to be election right now. Preferred Prime Minister polling. Poilievre at 34%. Trudeau at 19%. Singh doesn't change really at 16%. And then you have May, Blanchette, and Beignet. This is worrisome because the lies, the gaslighting, the misdirecting blame is working because people are not plugged into politics. They're not paying attention. They don't get it. All they know is that they're hurting and they're looking for someone to come and tell them what is wrong and that they'll fix it and that it's not their fault, it's somebody else's fault. Which it usually is, but not the way that they're thinking. This is a problem. It is a problem because we have a very illiterate political base here in Canada. And I would just want to, misdirect some blame here to the Americans. I will misdirect the blame and say that it's all your fault for having such spectacular, horrid politics there that Canadians are paying all their attention there. They're not paying any attention to what's happening here. So I'm blaming Americans for the lack of knowledge of Canadians knowing anything about Canadian politics. Yeah. And here you can see the Liberals. Again, it's not so much that the NDP is gaining seats, it's that the Liberals are losing so many seats to the Conservatives that they're almost tied. Well, they're tied in this poll. Which is, again, not good. Like the most you could hope for is maybe a minority government with the Conservatives, which any election with the Conservatives in power is just, it's not going to be a good outcome for anyone here in Canada. And here's part of the problem. Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is upsetting some people online after being photographed with a Versace bag in Toronto. Some people criticizing Singh for spending big bucks on accessories when the NDP platform is about fighting against income inequality. What are your thoughts? Well, since you asked, if you have extra money, spend it on wherever the hell you want. But optics matter. They do. He's supposed to be the working class leader, but when he's walking around with $1,000 bag, it doesn't give people like me much faith in him. You know, it's like he's separating himself from the average person. And yet Pierre Poilievre, despite his government-funded housing and healthcare and everything that he possibly needs, being, you know, through the government and being a millionaire and a landlord, he is making himself seem more like a person of the people than Jagmeet Singh. Canada wants a populist. The only populist right now is Pierre. I really wish they had a leadership run for the NDP. They had their convention, but they voted against having a leadership run because the people who can afford to go to the convention are people who are part of the establishment NDP, which are basically neoliberalites. Like they're just a lighter shade of Canadian liberal red. That's all they are. But they're the ones that can afford to go to the convention who vote on this sort of thing. So unfortunately, we did not have a leadership run for the NDP because there are far better people out there right now. I had a lot of hope for Jagmeet when he first got in. It's been a massive disappointment. And I also just thought this was interesting from Polling Canada. So Polling Canada on Twitter, go follow them. They aggregate from other polls. So this isn't polling that they do. They're just showing you polling that has happened, because some people like to accuse them of being biased when no, they're just polling it from actual, and they list their sources and everything of that sort. But those who say they are strongly or somewhat associated X with being core Canadian values. Oh, what do us Canadians think we are, eh? Freedom of speech, 92%. I just find that a little bit funny because we don't have free speech in Canada. We have freedom of expression, but we don't have absolute free speech like you do down in the States. We do get away with saying a lot, though. So, respect and inclusiveness. Yeah. Inclusiveness. Something like that. 90%. A lot of people, huh? Equality of opportunity, 90%. Democracy, 89%. Sorry. I just laugh at that because it's like Justin became leader with under 40% of the popular vote. Social safety net and Medicare, 89%. Wow. That just goes to show Canadians aren't paying attention to healthcare. And that just goes to show a lot of people who don't have to rely on disability because there's not much of a social safety net, as we'll get into in a moment. Equality of genders. As somebody who's non-binary, I have a little bit of, I'm not seeing that so much. Multiculturalism, 89%. That's like one of our Canadian core values. Wow. Equality regardless of sexual orientation, tolerance for different religious faiths, both at 88%. The thing is that if this was Canada, I'd be pretty happy with it. But this is the maple washed version of Canada that Canadians buy into. Like these they're core values in words, but not in practice. This isn't, I want Canada to be like this, but it's not. And burying your head in a bucket of maple syrup isn't going to change that fact. It is like, that's all the stuff that I thought Canada was when I was a kid. And then I grew up, started learning about what happened at residential schools. So much for the multiculturalism. You know, even now with Canada's support for Israel and what's happening over there. And there's so much racism in Canada, and the social safety nets and the Medicare that we think we have that we don't, and we're losing at astronomical rate. Like, if Canada could be the country it pretends to be, it'd be a pretty great place. Okay, let's chat. And am I still not frozen? I am still moving around. Okay, that's good. But I'm still a bit blurry, like there's Vaseline over the lens. Is that a thing? Was that actually how they used to do that sort of thing? I don't know. Let's go back up. Looney Tunes 9000, Jesus, does he sound like a broken record saying a terrorist attack? Well, that was the same word repeated over and over again. 2 words. He didn't say it that many times. Grand Theft Autobot, even some Canadians don't understand the difference between provincial and federal. They're just looking for an easy scapegoat. Yeah. A lot of issues, there are solutions on different levels of government, and the different levels of government have to work together in order to get a lot of things done. But there are things that fall under different jurisdictions, and like the federal government tends to dole out the money, but then it's up to the province on how to spend that money. And so the federal government can withhold that money to try to get the province to do what it wants in certain situations. But like foreign affairs, that's federal. You know, provincial governments don't do anything with that unless they're trying to make a deal with an American state on trade or something of that sort. But a lot of Canadians don't know how that works, which is why it's always so easy for the federal and provincial governments to blame the other one for not doing what needs to get done. When in reality, oftentimes in those situations, both of them could do something to improve the situation, like specifically around housing or, you know, helping people who live with disabilities. A lot of the healthcare issues, they constantly point the finger at each other for not doing enough when both of them could be doing something. Grand Theft Autobot again, and I'm in Ontario, and the food bank in my area sucks, not even worth going to. Yeah, and there's all this pressure for Canadians to give more to the food bank because the responsibility falls on the average person to make sure others don't starve. But the average person is also, you know, their budgets are becoming tighter and tighter and tighter, so people who could donate to food banks before now can't. And a lot more who neither donated nor didn't donate now need it. This is part of the reason why so many people have mental health problems. Lynn, and thank you, Trudeau, for not getting us the proportional representation I voted your arse in for. Yeah, that's how we got a majority way back when. What was it, 2015? By promising proportional representation when it comes to politics. That was a campaign promise. But the Liberals are very good at promising promises and announcing announcements. They do very little follow through. I think that comes up somewhere in one of the one-off stories that I have. Let's just see. The anti-corporatist, by the way. Hi, everyone. I'm driving on icy roads in Idaho, around curves and up and down mountains, so I'm going to be mainly listening. Sorry. Love to y'all. Drive safe. Drive safe. Oh. Okay. Let's get on to... I have all these tabs open. I want to get on to... issues around housing here in Canada. Two things I talk about a lot. Okay, there's a lot of things I talk about a lot on this channel. But one of them is healthcare. The other one is housing. Because on the hierarchy of needs, these two things are really up there. You know, you need your healthcare and you need a place to live. And then you need food. But you need a safe place to go, a place where you can feel safe, to get out of the elements. To have a place where you can store food for yourself that will stay safe and all that sort of stuff. So from Mitchell Tremblay, Toronto housing. While the average rent in Toronto is now $2,908 per month as of October, the typical one-bedroom unit is $2,607. The hotel is offering rooms for a monthly price of just under $2,000, which also includes parking as well as a pool and a gym access. It's gotten so bad that hotels are cheaper, offering cheaper stays than rent. It's just... what do you do with that? And that's into, you know, Toronto's area's average rental price increased an alarming 41% in April compared with the pandemic low recorded 2 years earlier. It just keeps on going up and up and up. And it leads us to, you know, other corporations looking to cash in on it by offering slightly cheaper rooms in a freaking hotel. Like, where do you even go with that? And talk about like insecure, unstable housing from month to month, because, you know, hotel rooms aren't meant to be a residence. You know, you don't get a lease, which in a lot of cases is not actually a bad thing. But it's so insecure. Like, you can get kicked out at any moment. It is just, this is what we're coming to. And the thought of being in a building with a pool and a gym is kind of nice. But this is what we're coming to. And even then, who can afford that? A reminder that Ontario Disability pays out about $1,300 a month. Can't even afford that. Oops, this is going to be loud because it autoplays. There we go. Growing number of homeless people turning to ERs for shelter and warmth, Ontario study says. Because that's one of the horrible things about Canada. There are no warm places over the winter. Over the winter, hundreds of people die from the elements. Unhoused people. Because, you know, our winters can be quite brutal, no matter where you are in this country. there's no warm places to go. And so some people are just turning to the ERs as a place to get out of the elements. And they do get kicked out. I've been in an ER when I've had food poisoning and there was an unhoused person in there. And they just needed a place to stay for a little bit. But they were getting kicked out by security because ERs are overcrowded with people who are also sick. Because, you know, the cuts to healthcare. So when Dr. Carolyn Snyder arrives for her early morning emergency room shift, she regularly sees between 5 and 10 people in the waiting area who don't need medical attention, just a safe place to stay warm. They're truly there just to stay out of the elements, said Snyder, chief of emergency department at St. Michael's Hospital in downtown Toronto. This has already been occurring this fall. I can't even imagine what will be occurring over the upcoming winter months, she said. There's been a significant increase in the number of homeless people taking refuge in downtown Toronto emergency departments over the last few winters, Snyder said. She and colleagues did some research to see if they could quantify what they were seeing. Yeah. I'm not going to go over the whole article. I should have remembered to link it below. I'll do that after this. But here's somebody else. You know, again, just the outrageous costs of rent. My daughter is getting evicted today. She looked at a studio apartment with a mini fridge and no stove. It's not up to code for a stove. $1,600 a month plus utilities. And no one is doing a fucking thing about it. The fact that we're allowed, the fact that rent has been allowed, no encouraged, to skyrocket like this is life ruining. We need way more housing built, yes, but greed means the rent is never coming down, and it's impossible to live a happy, healthy life when a huge portion of your income goes to rent. And as she points out, this is in Kitchener, not a huge city, not the metropolis of Toronto or Vancouver. This is just a regular city with rent like that for a studio apartment. That's not even up to code for a stove. How are we supposed to live like this? And then our options for what we can do just keep on getting taken away and taken away. Don't autoplay. It's going to autoplay, aren't you? Stop. Toronto confirms plan to clear Kensington Market encampment on Friday morning. The Minister of Church in Kensington Market says she's heartbroken and extremely anxious for those staying at an encampment there after receiving word the city intends to evict the residents and clear the site Friday morning. Reverend Canon Maggie of St. Stephen in the Field Anglican Church on Bellevue on a road told CP24 that the City of Toronto Encampment Office informed them on Wednesday night that it plans to remove the makeshift camp, which is located on a small plot of private and city-owned land just west of the church. We have been told by other sources as well that there is no intention to fully fence off the site to prevent any further occupation. Yeah, there is the intention to fence off so that people don't go back. Who noted that the news was communicated by phone as the city typically does despite their previous request for written notification. Some of the people who are here have been here for nearly 2 years. This is their home. It is the closest thing to a home some of them have had for a very long time, she said. She went on to say that the encampment's residents depend heavily on the support they receive from the church and nearby agencies. We are seeing people stabilizing and becoming healthier because they have a single place to be rather than being chased from park to park and from doorway to doorway. All of that is being put at risk now. The church says she provides those staying at the encampment with access to first aid, social support services, including peer support worker, friendship, and counseling, as well as church resources if they want them. The West End-based neighborhood group Community Service also provides the residents with mental health, caseworkers, peer support workers, housing workers, and addiction counselors, among other things. She said, adding, the encampment has become a place where people feel like there's someone who cares about them. And it was taken away. I've talked about this. Here, I'll go back to the main shot for this one. I've talked about this before, about encampments. And it is people picking the least worst option for them. And there's a lot of benefits to the encampment, whereas you do have a community. You have people you can relate to around you. You can build up supports and networks. You look out for one each other. You become a community. Community is desperately missing from society. And then you get taken away and put into the shelters that are offered are often unsafe for a lot of people, around people who are bad for you for whatever reason. You're taken away from your supports. Couples can be split up. All your belongings have to go in the garbage because you're only allowed a certain amount of items. And when you're living unhoused, the items you have on you are things you need for your immediate survival or have such strong sentimental value you can't bear parting with it. And you have the choice of going into a shelter that could be harmful mentally to you and losing all of that, or staying in an encampment. So, Mayor Olivia Chow, I was in your house running Jessica Bell on election day a year and a half ago. After a year, I was putting NDP signs under my tent to keep rats from chewing through. Last Friday, in a city you run, I was sitting on a curb crying as heavy machinery displaced yet more people. Municipally, provincially, federally, where are the so-called progressives? I have reached out to the NDP contacts I know, asking anyone in any level of government to provide me and my people with more support than scavenge barrier between us and the rats and the cold, hard ground. I packed my life up in Jessica Bell tote bags as I was displaced time after time. Progressive politicians, is it hard to call for a moratorium on encampment evictions, or is it just that low on your priority list? And that's from, I guess, AI, they, them, or is that AL? Al, they, them? T.O. Nuisance on Twitter. Joy Henderson, what the actual fuck is going on? Is Mayor Olivia Chow just a diet John Tory? So, John Tory, who definitely isn't a vampire as proven by the lack of reaction to the silver spoon shoved up his ass, was the former mayor of Toronto that I originally had that line for, and I still want to use every time I introduce him. He was big on destroying encampments and displacing lots of people, and the new mayor, Olivia Chow, promised to be better on that. Promised to, not be that horrible person that is destroying people's homes and communities. And then Joy also says, as much as I feel for those who voted for her, I'm also very frustrated because y'all don't listen. She tried to warn people that Olivia wasn't who she said she was going to be. So the city of Toronto cleared an encampment today, forcibly evicting people from their tents. Diane Sachs, your actions are violent and harmful. Olivia Chow, why does this infrastructure of displacement still exist? And they'll always say, oh, well, we offered them a place to go, but they refused and things of that sort. And again, they're picking the least worst option. If you keep on offering them the same thing over and over again and they're not taking it, there's a reason. It's the same as if you're hungry and somebody offers you a rotten apple to eat and you refuse to eat that rotten apple, you're not choosing to go hungry. You're choosing not to get sick. From Lorraine Lamb, all day residents then get a suitable indoor offers while witness stuck around until around at 5 p.m. The city issued trespass notices threatening to arrest residents if they didn't move to where. Then after nightfall, the claw came and cleared people out. So they basically waited until, a lot of the protesters and people and cameras went away before. They have this machine, and it is disturbing looking machine that is literally like just goes and takes things, crunches it up, and throws it in a dumpster. And that's their homes, their tents, their belongings that just get thrown out like trash. Because that's what the officials in Toronto think of those people. Yeah, the city waited until witness numbers lessened and then pulled that shit. The fact that the city waited until nighttime to arrest and evict tells me that they knew what they were doing was unethical and they didn't want to do it in broad daylight with the media and public eye on them. And now residents will simply be at another park without their winter gear and belongings because there's no housing or available indoor options. Congratulations on spending so much money today, City of Toronto, on literally achieving nothing but displacement and trauma. Diane Sachs has been the driver of much scheming and strategizing to evict these folks for months, even using the guise of a garden for displacement. Let her know what you think if you're in Toronto. And she didn't even show up. And that's the problem, is the options just keep on being taken away and taken away. And it's just, again, this is both something that the province and municipalities are responsible for. But here we have, did I hear that right from Laura Babcock? Mayor Olivia Chow is beseeching feds for $500 million to build affordable housing for people to have shelter from the cold. Meanwhile, Doug Ford is spending $500 million on a garage so cars can park at a spa. There's a lot of controversy around a place called Ontario Place in Toronto, which used to be a very fun place to go community-wise, that Doug Ford is now using MZOs to override what the city wants to make it into a luxury spa. And he's spending more money on that than infrastructure is being spent on cities. Exactly, and Ford is spending $200 million on sewer and water upgrades for a spa, while cities get $66 million per year for their sewer water infrastructure. You can tell what Ford values. Because, it's up to the province to work with the cities and help them out with that sort of thing, and that's what you get. Warming centers will be open today as the city marks its coldest day of the season. Toronto is opening 3 warming centers after 5 p.m. to offer space and facilities to vulnerable individuals as temperatures drop. Why aren't they 24 hours, as Sarah says? Do people only freeze after 5 p.m.? Yeah. These warming centers are not even being funded properly. Instead, they'll spend a lot of money clearing an encampment. The police needed, everything, the security, the equipment, all of that. They'll spend the money on that instead of making sure that there's enough warming centers open 24/7 for people. And then they spent money on doing this from Lorraine Lamb again. City has no money to open warming centers, but has money to be back at the encampment for another day to put up giant blocks of cement to cover the ground so people don't go back and sleep there. Make it spiky so people don't sleep on top. Time to find some foam mats to put on top. So the encampment that they just got rid of by that church, that they put these massive cement blocks there so that people couldn't go back after all their belongings were thrown in the trash. So they can spend money on that, of course. And here's another option that is being kind of put out there. The Canadian government has launched a container house pilot program in Peterborough for homeless people. Each cabin will cost the city $21,000, said the city spokesperson. It will also be staffed 24/7. People ridicule this idea. So this is from Colonial Angus. Go, stop that. This idea yet to support giving billions to developers to build mansions that no first-time homeowner can entertain buying. Most of them burn down. Anyhow, at least people will live in these homes. So a lot of the new housing that you hear being built isn't housing that's going to be affordable to anyone. Even when they say, oh, this is going to be affordable housing, what the city means is 80% of market rate, which is often not affordable to the people who need it. And so these container homes, I know there's one in my area, are being used as like a stopgap measure. But what they don't tell you is, like, you look at these things, there's no plumbing in them. So in the middle of winter, you have to go out to a washroom to shower, to go to the washroom, because, you know, you don't get that in those little containers. These are often away from supports in areas that are fenced off where you're not allowed to have visitors. You have to check in and things of that sort. Transportation to and from can be a challenge. And I'm worried that, let's go back here. I'm worried that they look at this as the solution. Like, I'm fine with it being a temporary measure for people to get off the streets. But I'm worried that these tiny type homes, people will look at that, well, you get this, so you don't need anything else. Because, yeah, they can help. But there is no one solution out there that will solve this crisis. And there's so much more all levels of government can be doing, and they're choosing not to. It is just, this is all choice. This is all by design, what the government is doing. All by design. This doesn't have to be like this. Like, Doug Ford getting rid of rent control is a big one as to why rents are skyrocketing in Ontario. Like, it's not even enough to put a rent freeze in place where landlords aren't allowed to freeze rents. It needs to be lowered. Like, literally cut in half for people to survive. Because it's not just about the unhoused folks. There's also people in very precarious situations, you know, in housing that is harmful to them, that they can't move from. Housing that, you know, they're on the verge of losing and will have nowhere to go. It is such a large problem. And yet, in all parties of the federal and provincial governments, you have landlords making the laws. They're, you know, politicians are part of the 1%. And all of them have landlords within their ranks. What kind of laws do you think they're going to make? It's not going to be for people like me. It's going to be to support them. They make laws for themselves, not for the people of Canada, but for themselves to benefit. Let's check chat. Donald James X, I'm lucky and comfortable where I'm at right now, but I also have a homeless cousin and a nephew. I'm glad you're in a good place. Like, that's the thing. I'm quite happy in my current apartment. It's a nice apartment. No complaints, really. But constant anxiety that I'm going to lose this place. And I know, in fact, I may be forced to move at some point in the not too distant future. And I don't get a choice in that. And that causes a lot of the stress. Like, yeah, something that would help my mental health a lot is just knowing I could stay here and that my rent isn't going to skyrocket. So, Dark Witch at My Dogs Are Goth, we lived Back in the co-op now, the one where I can't leave, no ramp, and smoking goes all around me. With my asthma, I need more and more meds. But there's nothing else. Yeah, I was talking about smoking and what rights people have in my last live stream, and there's actually an update to that story. Uh-huh. There's an update. We just can't have anything good. Morbius Dragon, I slept on the street when I was a teen because I couldn't go home because of how effed up it was. Sleeping outside was better than abuse. Yeah. I lived in youth shelter systems, and you're there for a reason. You know, it's because it's safer than being at home if you have a home. A lot of the people that were around me came from abusive households. Dark Witch, and when I was in a hotel, we asked for help from my NDP. He said to look for accessible housing in my neighborhood full of houses and landlords. This dude was NDP. I'm so disappointed. Yeah, the NDP is just a knockoff version of the Liberal Party right now. It is so disappointing. We do not have a progressive party in Canada. For a country that likes to think and advertise that we're so progressive, we're not. Actually, why don't I just give you that update right now before I get into stuff on Gaza? So last live stream, I was talking about, you know, the fight over freedoms, you know, the freedom for, like, should people be allowed to smoke in their own place versus neighbors who are, you know, harmed by that secondhand smoke. And I fall into the category of secondhand smoke is not good. And I pointed out because I remembered, you know, New Zealand has this thing where if you were born after a certain year, you wouldn't be allowed to buy cigarettes. And so that would keep on going, like the age would keep on going up and up and up. So like in a certain amount of years, you'd have to prove that you're 54 in order to buy a pack of cigarettes. And that was their way of overcoming smoking addictions. And I thought, you know, that's a good model. That is a good model. I'm not against that, because how cigarettes are allowed to be legal blows my mind, considering how toxic and poisonous and the cost that it adds to the healthcare system, and the fact that it kills so many people a year. Like, no product like that would ever be allowed to go out to the market today. So why are we allowing this one to stick around? And so that, to me, the New Zealand model was like the least harmful way to do it. About that, New Zealand abandons world's first generational smoking ban. Did they like know I did a segment on them or something? Like just a week previous? That this happened? Like, seriously? New Zealand has scrapped legislation that would have prevented a generation of young people from legally purchasing cigarettes. On Monday, after Prime Minister Christopher Luxon was newly sworn into office, the Conservative leader, do you really have to clarify that this asshole is Conservative, confirmed his government would repeal the strict tobacco restrictions before they came into effect. The legislation would have banned the sale of cigarettes to anyone born after 2008. The legislation was the first of its kind. It would have seen a minimum age of cigarettes go up. At the time, the decision was praised by international health officials, ones who many now find the reversal a bit of a drag. Was that an intentional pun? You know, a bit of a drag. I don't know. Luxon said on Monday his main goals as Prime Minister are to improve the economy and curb inflation. Yeah. Make sure that your cigarette corporation buddies don't lose any money. He said smoking rates in New Zealand have been declining for the last 30 years. Luxon agreed that banning cigarettes for young people Luxon argued that banning cigarettes for young people, an untaxed black market, was likely to emerge. He said tax revenue from sales of cigarettes was not the motivation for backtracking the plan. No, it's not that. It's the money going to the corporations. You got to make sure that those corporations that are making a product that literally kills you gets their money. That's more important than the health and well-being of the people that elected you into power. Luxon clarified that the new government will also forego laws that intend to reduce the amount of nicotine allowed in tobacco products to non-addictive levels. The legislation would have additionally slashed a number of stores legally able to sell cigarettes from 6,000 to 600 nationwide. The ban was expected to prevent smoking-related deaths and could have saved up to 5,000 lives a year. Prior to being elected, Luxon did not mention reversing the smoking ban. Though smoking rates are relatively low in New Zealand, they remain higher among Indigenous, I have no idea how to say that, sorry, with about 20% of the reporting they smoke. The country has increased funding for health services and campaigns to encourage quitting smoking, specifically for, again, sorry, I have no idea how to say that, and Pacific communities, The Guardian reported. Health Coalition, another word I don't know how to say, an anti-smoking group from New Zealand called the decision to repeal a massive win for the tobacco industry, whose profits will be boosted at the expense of Kiwi lives. The coalition's government smoke-free amendment repeal will cost thousands of lives and have the greatest effect on... Sorry, I don't know how to say that word, the group wrote. The generational smoking ban, as it's often been called, was first proposed by Jenica? I remember hearing her name. I don't remember how to say it. Government in 2022. It served as an inspiration for other countries to follow suit. And in October, British Prime Minister, you know what? I just don't know names. I don't, Rishi, I don't know, proposed the UK would follow suit. The Prime Minister said under proposal, the UK could potentially phase out smoking among young people completely as soon as 2040. Since New Zealand has repealed their legislation, the UK will now become the first country to implement the generation smoking ban, providing a Conservative government doesn't change that. Should the legislation be passed. So it still would need to get passed before the Conservatives can overrule it. The BBC reported that that person's position on the ban has not changed. Luxon's National Party won New Zealand's federal election in October with 38% of the vote. Gotta love those parliamentary systems. The National Party formed a coalition with New Zealand's first a populist and nationalist political party. Yeah, gotta love those political parties that get in with well under half of the popular vote. We had a good thing. We had a good thing going there, a good model to follow suit, and it's gone. Kind of like whenever there's a test for guaranteed livable income or a basic income, a lot of those studies aren't even allowed to get finished if a new government gets put in place beforehand. Ugh. Anyway, I just wanted to give you that update because it just seems so ironic that it was just a week ago or a little bit more than a week or something that I was talking and praising this. It's like they knew. Oh, well. Anyway, let's get on to some stuff about Gaza. And as I've mentioned before, when covering this subject, I tend to stay away from the more brutal aspects of it. and try to cover different areas of it, because we can only handle so much horror in any given day. Let's see. So the serfs had tweeted out, because there was a ceasefire that was called, and Israel couldn't even make it a day without breaking the ceasefire. As far as I know, the ceasefire has been extended for a couple days now. But that hasn't stopped the killing, especially in the West Bank. Because there's no ceasefire in the West Bank. It doesn't cover that. And deaths have been increasing from settlers killing Palestinians there, has been increasing quite drastically in the West Bank since all of this has started, and the focus has been on Gaza. Why they can do this for a few days without, like how they can do this for a few days without continuing it, just boggles my mind. Like the idea that, okay, so there was a swap. So you had the people who were unlawfully imprisoned by Israel versus the hostages that Hamas took. Now, I say they're unlawfully imprisoned because I don't think Israel took them as bargaining chips. I don't view them as hostages. I view them as, you know, prisoners that were just plucked off the street and kidnapped and thrown into prison. Whereas the people taken by Hamas were specifically meant for bargaining chips. And I feel like, so they've released a whole bunch of, Israel released a whole bunch of the people that they were imprisoning for no reason, you know, made up reasons, forced confessions, and all that sort of stuff, to a place where in a few days they can continue that bombing and potentially kill them. I just, they're releasing the prisoners into an area that's being bombarded with bombs. Like, and people who are trying to go back to Gaza, like northern Gaza, to get some of their belongings or try to find their missing friends and family, they're being shot at, attacked. This is not a war. This is just an attack from Israel, a land grab. They're destroying it. It is just one of those things. Like, how can you ethically say, "Oh yeah, we're going to give you guys a few days to relax, but then the bombing will start again," without seeing what kind of monster you are? How can they do that? Like, there needs to be a permanent ceasefire. It is just, I can't get over that. How it's like, yeah, we're releasing all these prisoners back into the Gaza Strip. Good luck. You know, it's, am I the only one who noticed that? Like, it's sadly, where they're being abused and tortured in the prison, it's almost safer because at least there they're not getting bombed and having buildings collapse on them. Ole, she has a YouTube channel. You should go check it out. She is amazing. Always love hearing her rant. So she says, I genuinely understand the fear of Joe Biden losing to Donald Trump and the danger a Republican administration poses. But it's another thing to entirely say to Joe Biden, a man financially aiding a genocide, is doing a remarkable job by doing so. And I say that without malice towards you. Who's she responding? Oh, she's responding to Dave Pacman here, who's saying that Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war has been remarkable. I didn't know much about Dave Pacman for this. I kind of saw him as a little bit more of a centrist, but again, where people are coming out on the side of Israel and just their staunch adherence to it, that forgoes all the morals that they claim they have blows my mind. But let's hear her rant. Her rants are always fun. I think it's going to be incredibly loud to start.
Oh, fuck. We're so fucked. We're so fucked. Listen, as somebody who, I'm not somebody who wants Joe Biden to lose, right? Like, I'm not even somebody who has the torch for being anti-Democrats and shit right now. I am very much somebody who thinks Donald Trump and the Republicans getting into office is going to be a disaster out of this world. I think that we are downplaying the threat. Like, I feel like fascism isn't the right word no more. I feel like we need to start threatening niggas with authoritarian regime and all of that. I know it would be absolutely batshit bananas to pretend that Joe Biden ain't fucking up on his handle. Fucking up. He's aiding a genocide. My nigga. At the very least, if you can't admit that, you have to just be quiet. Just be quiet for this season. Like, it's one thing. Like, there's levels. There's levels. There's levels to, like, Democrat dick sucking, right? For lack of a better. And I'm not saying that I myself am not a dick sucker a little bit, but there's levels to this. It's one thing to, there's a reasonable level to believe Democrats and Republicans are not the same, and it's still obviously going to be way, 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 way fucking worse. Everything that you're mad about right now is going to be worse under Trump and the Republicans. I believe that. There's one thing to think that. It's another thing to pretend that Joe Biden is handling this well. Like, he's doing a remarkable job giving billions of dollars to aid a genocide. I feel like no, right? No? I feel like no.
I almost feel bad that she's making me laugh and talk about genocide.
I feel like we have to sit that. I feel like you have to at least get at people that. But follow me. I just think as a strategy, this is not a good one. Like, my thing is, even if you believed that Joe Biden was doing an amazing job, even if you were like, oh, fuck these fucking leftist, liberal, dummy, crybaby bitches, even if you thought that, even if you felt that, do you think that's going to be an effective strategy to get them to like Joe Biden? You know what I mean? Or to vote for Joe Biden? Like, why is that good? If they're like, no, I'm not voting for Joe Biden because he's committing a genocide, why is it that, like, why are the talking points is what I'm asking. Why are the Democrat talking points that they're giving people so bad? Why are people coming out and being like, he's doing a great job with the genocide? I don't know if that's the marketing you want. Or they're like, we're all going to do genocide, so vote for this genocide. I just don't think that's a good strategy. Like, messaging-wise. Just messaging-wise.
Sorry, I just need to check. I got like a fluff in my eye. It's bugging me. Anyway, yeah. Only she can make me laugh at the thought. It's just... But along that same vein of thought, a little while ago, Mehdi Hassan had this very interesting tweet that came out. So he's replying to Shadi Ahmed. Since I've been back home for Thanksgiving break, I've had in-depth conversation with 4 Arab relatives and family friends. All 4 have said they won't vote for Biden in 2024. They insist they will abstain even if it ends up benefiting Trump. And Mehdi quotes tweet that with, I've had the same conversations with all my Muslim friends and family members over Thanksgiving. Not a single one say they will vote for Biden again, having voted for him in 2020. Every single one say it's because of Gaza. Dems need to understand that the anger is very real. And yes, of course, Trump would be worse for Biden than Biden for Muslims. But people are angry and people are hurting and people want to politically punish Biden for supporting what's happening in Gaza. And this is the only way they know how in a 2-party presidential system. I get the anger and the replies. Not sure why you're all shouting at the messenger. Should I not tell you what people are thinking, saying? Would you prefer not to know and think it all is fine? And for the folks lecturing me, oh, LOL, on the dangers of Trump too, maybe watch my show. Yeah. We all know Trump would be worse, just like we all know Pierre Poilievre is going to be worse than Justin Trudeau. But what options do we have left when it comes to, like, there are lines. Joe Biden is supporting a genocide. And for a lot of people, it affects them directly. They have friends and families in Gaza, and even if it doesn't affect you directly, it's a fucking genocide. I don't know anyone over there. I think this is horrible. You don't have to personally know people there to understand how horrid this is. But what options are left in this stupid political systems that we have? Because yes, in Canada, we have a parliamentary system, but no, we don't really, because it's only ever been the Liberals and the Conservatives in power. We more or less have a two-party system. The few times that coalitions have formed in recent memory, like now with the NDP, does dick all to changing the system. Like, our options are, you know, worse and worser. It is, how do you fight back? How do you morally go to the polls and vote for someone who is shoveling money over to a genocide? And, you know, Biden needs to hear this. He needs to know. He needs to understand what's happening, because they're not going to turn around and vote for Trump because they know Trump is worse. They just won't vote. But Biden needs all the people coming out as possible, because he didn't win by all that much. Not as much as he should have, considering how horrible Trump was. So, and a lot of these areas where, you know, the margins were just so thin, having a few hundred people not come out to vote for you makes that difference. And yet people still want to blame the voter for this. Go for it, Muslims. Punish Biden, who has sympathy for you by making sure the guy who wants to get rid of Muslims with cruelty is president. Just remember, you'll own the result. Dems won't be able to do anything for you while you watch your friends and family get deported. We need to make one thing very clear with this. This is Biden's fault. He's the one responsible for this. He could have handled this situation in 1,000 other ways that would not be resulting in this. He's responsible, not the voters in this situation. Okay? Like, that is, he's at fault. This is a consequence of his actions and inactions. But they're just going to blame the voter, a lot of these people. They're just going to blame the brown people for not coming out for Biden. That's what they're going to do. Make it seem like it's their fault, but, you know, there's lines. There are lines where it's like, if the president is supporting somebody who's killing your friends and family, Biden could have handled this so many other ways that wouldn't have led to what is about to happen. And they're just sticking their heads in the sand. They're ignoring these warnings from Mehdi, from Ole, from, you know, little quiet people like me, who are saying that this is going to be a problem. But they're in their bubbles. They're wealthy bubbles of people who, tell them what they want to hear, and the result is going to be disastrous for everyone. I should have just stayed in this shop for right now, because I care about who gets elected into the States. I often feel like that as the American neighbor, we should be allowed to vote too, because of how much your president impacts us. It has a massive effect on what happens in this country. Also, over 330 million people in the States, I kind of care about what happens to all of you down there. Yeah? And I don't want to see another Trump presidency and the harm it's going to cause all of you, as well as the harm it's going to cause all of us up here. It is just a nightmare scenario. I still can't get over the fact that there's a good chance that we're going to have Trump as president, Pierre as prime minister, while still having like Doug Ford as premier of Ontario. And that still won't be enough to wake people up, because people will just end up being hurt, and the conservatives will stick to being those populists, telling them that it's all still just the liberals' fault. It's the fault of the other people, anyone else other than, them. And it's just, I'm not going to play this because it's kind of really sad. But it just, again, these are some of the prisoners that Israel was holding. And you have a kid who was kidnapped at 8 years old. Oh, 8 years ago when he was only 13 years old. With the Israeli officer interrogating him, just yelling and screaming at him. He has no supports, no family, nobody there looking out for him, no adults in the room for him. And a lot of people in the comments will be like, oh, well, he was attacking, blah, blah, blah. He's a kid. He maybe threw a rock at a tank, and they threw him in prison for 8 years. The amount of abuse towards children that is happening down there and has been allowed to happen for so long. And again, somebody like him can now be released to go into Gaza to get bombed. It's disgusting. It is just so disgusting that they've been allowed to get away with it for this long. But the part of the reason why they've been able to get away with it so long, and there are, just making sure that the audio isn't playing right now, and that there is more pushback now, is because we have other sources than mainstream media. Because mainstream media is actually, as Pierre Poilievre said, biased, but not towards the liberals, towards the establishment, towards, the status quo. And we're seeing it now for the first time, because we have so many smartphones out there, so many independent reporters out there showing us what's actually happening. And so the news mainstream media isn't able to hide it as much anymore. So play this TikTok from your favorite guy, it says down there.
Here's everything you need to know about the biggest news channel in Canada banning the word Palestine and censoring pro-Palestinian messages.
I love how young the people are that are getting into this. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm old, but he looks 12. I know he's older than that, but he looks so young to me.
This is CTV News, Canada's biggest media company worth over $100 billion. Now, this week, their own journalists came out and exposed what they were doing. These journalists shared that CTV News sent out an email to all of their employees telling them not to use the word Palestine in any news coverage, whether it be on TV or on the social media pages. They were not to cover any protests that called for a ceasefire, nor anybody who called for a ceasefire, and they were also only approved to use casualty numbers that were specific to Israelis, But when it came to Palestinians, they were to summarize by the hundreds or the thousands, not specific numbers. This was in order to downplay what was happening to the Palestinians. These journalists also shared that CTV News harassed and disparaged Palestinian guests, and that Palestinian guests were only approved to be on if they were crying, essentially. They couldn't be critical of Israel, they couldn't call for a ceasefire, and if they were not invited back. This was the only piece of CTV News that used the word Palestine, and they almost immediately took it out. CTV News is biased, this is evil, this is enabling the genocide. What do you guys think about this? That's all for this video. Free Palestine.
Yeah, the media has always been this biased. It's just now we know. Like, that's the thing. There's more exposure to the truth right now. Unfortunately, there's a lot of fake news also going around, so we have to be careful about that. But the mainstream media can't hide it anymore. They can't, be so biased anymore and people not find out. Like, these get leaked now. And this is why there's so much more pushback than there has been, not the reason, but part of the reason why there's been so much pushback. But the way media has handled this in the past, present, probably in the future, has a lot to do with how the public interprets what's going on. Because here we have Barbara Kay. So she's quote tweeting something from Douglas Murray, "What makes Hamas worse than Nazi? A very important piece by a leading British historian and peer." Yeah. What makes Hamas worse than Nazis? Yeah. And Barbara Kay chimes in and says, "Also, Nazis only wanted Jews of Europe dead. Hamas exterminationist ambitions are global." There's a community note to that saying the Nazis' ambition for genocide of Jews was not restricted to Europe, and the aim of the final solution was to murder all Jews they could get hold of, also beyond Europe. Barbara Kay is a columnist for the Canadian newspaper National Post. She also writes a weekly column for the Post Millennial and a monthly column for Epoch Times. Those are right-wing rags. I'm planning on potentially doing a story about the National Post and the absolute horrendous and biased coverage that they've been doing on queer issues, transgender issues in particular. Epoch Times is absolutely horrible, which actually shows up on the doorstep every now and then. That's somehow gets through Canadian Post, even though there's a lot of hate speech going on in there. A lot of restricted speech. Our freedom of speech isn't absolute, and Epoch Times kind of violates that. But she's allowed to be a reporter. Somebody who says that is allowed to be a reporter. It blows my mind how much money is on the right. That they can get away with this type of bullshit. But, to the people that are in those conservative right-wing circles and bubbles, that's what they see. They don't see the truth. They don't venture outside of it because, the National Post is supposed to be a news organization that relays facts. That's supposed to be where you can go for information. Like, that's what people used to think of media outlets anyway, is that they're reliable sources of information. And as we've been learning more and more, that isn't the case, and that has never been the case. Maybe once upon a time, way, way back when, but even then, the reporting would have always been somewhat biased too. They pick what stories they deem important. Whether they're actually important to the people or not is a whole other situation. But there is some good stuff. Ottawa, over 100,000 took to the streets to demand an end to the occupation in Canada's biggest pro-Palestinian Palestine demonstration. Hell yeah. November 25th. I wish I lived closer to Ottawa. If I ever had to move from this city, I'd like Hamilton or Ottawa, I think. But there's better pictures of this. Look at this. So from Beeson, my hometown, showed up for Palestine. Such a beautiful sight. Look at that. Look at all those people. All those flags. That is awesome. That is so awesome. Like, just, this is what it takes. It's what it takes, and it has been, for some politicians, it has been weakening them. Like, just the sheer amount and the persistence of these rallies and protests is really starting to make a difference. Here's a picture of it, of the Hill. Look at that beautiful picture. Yeah. Like, I know the lack of snow is confusing people in Canada's capital, you know, but this is Ottawa, the capital of Canada, for all you Americans watching, and it's not snow covered right now. Confusing, I get it. Just so many wonderful people there. Just, yay. We still need more of that, though, that's for sure. See, I do have some stuff on Sarah Jama, but it's already been quite some time. Okay, I'll try to speed run this. So, Ontario NDP Provincial Council voted against 130 to 60 to readmitting Sarah Jama into caucus. I have a whole bunch of stories and videos about Sarah Jama and how the Ontario NDP kicked her out of caucus for supporting Palestine, which they later on went around and said almost the exact same stuff that she was saying. She is a Black woman living with a disability, so it's no shock that they somehow single her out of all the people. And there's been no progress in that, let's just say. So, from Tom Parkin, Ontario NDP, Council overwhelmingly votes down motion to reinstate Sarah Jama to caucus. Rumored motion for an early leadership vote doesn't materialize. And the Serve says, are we so out of touch that we vote to censure the only Black Muslim elected official rightly calling for a ceasefire? No, it's the constituents who are wrong. Well, there's been a lot of people kind of saying stuff. So Sarah had to release a statement saying, because there's a lot of, again, politicians lie and mislead all the time, and the NDP are no exception. So Sarah had to release a statement saying, I'm just going to say this once here since I keep hearing this and haven't said much. Merritt Stiles, who is the current leader of the Ontario NDP, and her team has not reached out around reconciliation or conversations about keeping doors open. I don't know why that keeps coming up, including at Provincial Council today. I made it clear I am down to have a conversation about what happened, yet I haven't spoken to anyone on the leadership team prior to or post being ejected. The public shouldn't be used to navigate HR issues. My silence was mainly out of respect. If you're going to reach out, do so. So if you're not going to reach out, stand on that with 10 toes. Stop lying about it. Because there's a lot of people saying that one of the first steps is that she should be reinstated to the NDP and Mayor Stiles needs to step down, but there's no going back to the NDP after this. And then somebody just saying, I understand Merritt Stiles reached out to you this past Wednesday, removing censure and caucus protection position on that, along with staff advice on moving forward. Staff reached out to you. They still await your response, from Chantel Mickle, I don't know. And basically blaming Sarah for not doing enough to fix the situation. And then Sarah had to respond saying, it's bad faith to conflate a response to a legal letter by my lawyer on the judicial review as keeping the doors open. Read my ejection from caucus. I agree. We all have important work to do. I'm just asking for the truth to be shared if I'm going to keep being brought up. There is so much more I could say and haven't said in response to being kicked out and what led to it. There is so much I could say about allegations, safety, and being called difficult. But I'm being respectful. I'm just asking y'all to stop lying because I have receipts. I want to see those receipts. I want to see those receipts. Yeah. So things are not really progressing with what's happening there, unfortunately. Some news in Alberta. NDP tried to do something good. So today the NDP, so the breakdown, if you want to know about what's happening in Alberta, on Twitter, you go to the Breakdown AB, and they do an amazing job of covering Albertan news. And yeah, Alberta is kind of like for people who want to go to, for Canadians who want to go to the United States but don't want a passport. Today, the NDP introduced a motion to see prescription contraception covered as healthcare. And the Minister for the Status of Women spoke up against it and argued that under the eye of the UCP, that's the Conservative Party there, women folk access to birth control is just fine. No change needed. Nope. You can't have contraception considered as health care. No. Because that is, yeah. This country is nowhere near as progressive as it pretends to be, as I keep on saying over and over again. Just like abortion care is not necessarily covered under a lot of the health care we have, depending on which clinic you have to go to in order to get it done. Yeah, it's just, let's get the earpiece in.
Each year, Alberta Health Services provides contraceptive health products to approximately 19,000 Albertans. Through these programs and services, women in Alberta already have access to a wide range of affordable and often free reproductive health options. These products and services are readily available to Alberta women, regardless of their ability to pay or where they live in the province. So, as members of this House can see, Alberta women already have broad access to a host of reproductive health options from which they can choose. Wholesale changes to these programs and services are not required to improve access. Now, Mr. Speaker, our government and
Yeah, it's good enough, so shut up.
Our partners continue to look at ways to support Alberta women with their reproductive health needs, as we have always done.
And of course, since they're a Conservative Party who don't give in to woke language, people like me aren't included in any of her statements.
I encourage members of the Assembly to recognize that Alberta's government stands by women and women's health through existing programs, and therefore to not support Motion 503. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all good enough, so shut up and deal with it. Prescription contraception isn't covered, which would help the vast majority of people, but you have other options, so you deal with that. And if you don't, then who cares, It's again, like sometimes the contraception is the only option that is available to a person, depending on their biology and how it affects their body and access-wise and things of that sort. And it goes back almost like to the encampment thing, like they're there because that's the least worst option. And for some people, their only option might be prescription contraception, but they're not allowed that. That didn't connect the way I thought it was. There is a connection there. It's just kind of like, here are the options. They're limited. They don't cover everyone. That's what it is. They don't necessarily meet your needs. And even though there are options that are available that could help more people, we're just going to refuse to do it. Oh, well. I wanted to end on a little bit of a good news story. I have videos on it on my channel about Bill 124 and how harmful that was to a lot of health QP workers here in Ontario, because it would cap their increases of salary to 1% a year. And it was just Doug Ford totally abusing workers in the worst ways possible. But thousands of public school elementary... Oh, my phone's ringing. That's interesting. 1,000 of public school and elementary teachers will receive Bill 124 back pay Global News has learned after the union signed a tentative 4-year agreement with the Ford government. So they're going to receive some back pay. That's at least good. And that's not horrible. We at least got that. Oops, that's not what I want up there. Main shot. Okay, let's see. Was there anything else? I think that was it for today. Yeah. So, those were the stories that I wanted to get to. I hope they were interesting for everyone. I'm trying to make this infotainment. Is that what it is? I don't know. News engaged-mentated? I don't know. I'm looking forward to watching some Star Trek Next Generation tonight. But I can't get over is how old the actors were when they did that series. Because I thought they were a lot older. So yeah, check some chat. Do chatters want any sort of kitschy name? Like a group name or something? I don't even know. I always feel weird and I don't want to impose anything on people, so I'll just continually refer to you guys as chat unless somebody comes up with an option that just blows all of our minds. Let's see. Dark Witch, voting should not be a matter of bad or worse. It's ridiculous, and he's feeling confident because he knows who the competition is. Yeah. Elections are harm reduction. The work to get candidates in that we actually want to vote for happens the rest of the time. And unfortunately, like, especially here in Canada, our systems are designed to make that extremely difficult. Because, like, for the NDP, you can't just run for the NDP. You have to be approved to run for the NDP. You have to be approved to run for the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party and all that sort of stuff. So they get to filter out people who would be more progressive from the get-go. The only option would be running as an independent, and just given the way our system works, you need so much money and name recognition in order to get any headway with that, and then you have very little power once you're actually in office. Like, I'm one of the people that I really wish more people came out to the last Ontario election to vote, because Doug Ford got into office with only 18% of possible votes, and the harm he's doing, the harm he has done, the harm he will do. It is like, and in some of those instances, it directly affects me when it comes to like disability payments and housing and all of that sort of stuff. And you really wish that people would just come out and vote for the least worst option, but like literally their families and friends are being killed. So for everyone who's affected like that, who won't go out and vote, there needs to be an ally who wouldn't have voted to go out and vote. Because there's lots of people who didn't go out and vote. So, you know, they need to step up this time. So Jules T, what are the migration requirements for Canada? I'm asking for a friend who might relocate in 2024. Yeah, I remember back when Trump first got elected, election night, the Canada immigration page crashed because it got so much volume. It's very difficult to immigrate to Canada. Very difficult. But I'm single. Marriage is probably the easiest way to get up here. Soul Life. Canada is preparing for America to go fascist and NATO, etc. It's real. Yeah. We're not far behind. We're not far behind. It's a little bit more difficult to get away with here, but not impossible. Morbius Dragon, I care about my Canadian neighbors as well. A little portion of the state I live in borders Canada. Huh. Hello, neighbor, spelt with a U. And an O. So MIDI doctors, 8 BBC journalists went on Al Jazeera to complain about BBC bias. Yeah, it's a lot of the mainstream Western media. They're not showing us, like, for the most part, they're showing us, the news they're showing us is accurate. It's just super cherry picked and doesn't give people a full understanding of what's happening. And they're excluding so many voices and perspectives and information that, yeah, it influences the general public to a point where up until now, Israel has been allowed to get away with all of this, you know? Supporting BDS was a way of being fired from jobs and stuff like that. And in some American states, I think, you know, it's virtually like illegal for you to support it. So much for freedom of speech. Yeah, it's becoming a lot more difficult for media organizations to get away with the same sort of biased bullshit they've been doing for so long. GGA, I don't know how to say your screen name, says if the US goes fascist, it would be the end of liberals and liberal values, and liberals, I don't mean leftists. Yeah, it's, if Trump gets in, democracy as we know it in the States is done. It's, you know, that the first time he was in was just a test run. Just suddenly had the vision of the first Jurassic Park movie where the raptors were testing the fence, you know, so that they could figure out how to get out and kill everyone. Morbius Dragon, I feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't want to vote for Biden, but also don't want to vote for anyone else that's running against him. Yeah, it is. I understand why people won't go out and vote. I still, like, even in Ontario with like what Ontario NDP did to Sarah Jama, I won't encourage people to go out and vote for the NDP anymore. But I still would encourage people to vote for harm reduction, which in often cases just means the NDP. Because there's nothing in that party to support anymore. And there's no good options, but, you know, if you want to look at it completely selfish ways right now with Biden, it's costing a lot of lives. With Trump, it will cost a lot more lives, and many of those lives will also be American. It won't be contained to some faraway place anymore. Morbius Dragon, we got snow today in Pennsylvania. We got a lot of snow here today. That makes me happy. I like snow. I'm like the only Canadian that will say that, but I actually do like the snow. And we actually got a little bit of snow cover today. Da, 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 da. Soul Life, I think Canada also made it harder for Americans to move to Canada in response to migration crisis from Project 2025. Actually, I think they're working on ways to make it easier for queer folk in particular to claim refugee status here in Canada. Oh yeah, I suppose that's another good news story that I could mention. That just reminded me because there was a petition that I helped promote a while back to allow transgender and non-binary folks from countries like the United States and England who normally wouldn't be able to claim refugee status here to be able to claim refugee status here on the account of their gender. And that became the third highest voted on or signed petition, not voted, signed petition in our Commons history. Well, one petition has just smashed all the records and became the #1 signed petition in our Commons history. And that was for calling on Justin Trudeau to actually do something about what's happening to Palestinians, to actually, you know, call it what it is and all that sort of stuff. And it's just, it's good that that petition just rocketed to the top. And it really, again, it enforces that, it really makes clear to the leaders, to the government, where Canadians are standing on this issue. And it's really making it clear that if they don't support these issues, Canadians won't be supporting them. Donald James X. Okay, I'm waiting for Jank to get on the Cali ballot. Boom. Let's go. Ugh. So, Love Fav Dragon. I usually like the snow, but my winter stuff is in storage, waiting to finish our move. Yeah. Dark Witch. I'm proud to have helped sign that one. Probably one of the two petitions. I signed both of them. Oh, there's another petition. Let's see. Do I actually have it up on screen? I don't know. That is so close to getting the number of signatures that it needs. Let's see. Do I have it saved somewhere? Sorry, this will only take a moment. I think, I hope. Let's go to my channel and live. And I had it, was it under this one? Ah, there we go. So this petition calls on the government of Canada basically to appeal to the UN Security Council to refer the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the main as the main person responsible for the crimes to international court. The crimes basically against women and people who were protesting, because there was that woman who was killed by the morality police of the Islamic Republic and stuff. Oh, no, that's great news. Okay. She needed 500 signatures by December 10th. got 500 signatures. Okay, so now it's actually going to be read on the House floor and actually put into record. That's good news. Go sign the petition if you're Canadian anyway. More signatures, the better. Oh no, that's really good news. Okay. I'll put that link in the description box after the live stream. But yeah, so let's do this stuff here. So if you can, please support my content by becoming a patron. You can do that by going to the link in the description box below. Special thank you to all the people who already have, to the people who have sent, payments through my PayPal, who have gotten me things off my wish list. Every little bit helps. And I appreciate it so, so much. And I understand, the difficulty, especially, how tight money is for a lot of people. So, I super appreciate it. You can also find me on these social medias. I still call it Twitter, but if you notice, there's a little X. That's the X over the bird's eye to make it look like it's dying, because, yeah. But as you saw from my video today, I still rely on Twitter for a lot of my sources. So it's going to be very difficult if something happens to that permanently. I wouldn't be upset if something happened to Elon Musk. Not encouraging it. Wouldn't be upset if it happened. You can check out my art here at SandeeLovas.com. That's another thing that could help me out a lot, is if people share that webpage to people so that I can start making money on portraits and stuff, because still I've only ever had one customer, being my mom. So as much help as you can give me there would be good. And like I said, tomorrow there's going to be a special live stream at 5 p.m. talking only about mental health. So there's a long video from Democracy Now! I want to go over. So, which is very, very important. That kind of goes into detail as to as much as medication and talk therapy can help maintain depression, it doesn't get to a lot of the root causes of depression. And a lot of those root causes comes from this neoliberal society that we live in. And, I've tried saying this to people before, but they don't tend to listen to me. But, they'll probably listen to a white British guy who had the privilege of being able to write a book about it. So there's that. So tomorrow will be solely about mental health. We'll be talking a lot about suicide and suicidal ideation and stuff of that sort. So if that is a bit much for you, I understand not tuning in for it. That's the main reason why I'm separating it from all of this. Plus, it's probably going to be a stream that's another couple hours. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else, and I'm still learning how to finish these streams. I believe Left Reckoning is on now. Later on, Environmental Coffee House has their live stream. If you need a good laugh and you're a Majority Report fan, they've already clipped it and posted it. Sam Cedar got through to Dennis Prager. Super fun clip to watch if you know anything about that. And that was a delightful little birthday gift for Sam. And I was the person in chat. They mentioned that at the very beginning of the show that somebody in chat mentioned that it was his birthday. And Matt thought that person was like, where are you coming from with that? Well, it's super easy for me to remember Sam's birthday because it's also my sister's birthday today. So happy birthday to my sister and happy birthday to Sam. So yeah, it is super, super easy for me to remember that. But yeah, so that was a nice little birthday gift to him from Ronald Reagan, who got him through. And he actually was able to have quite the conversation, but no wonder the right is loaded, because half of the program is ads because there's ad breaks. And then as soon as they come back from the ads, it's Dennis giving, you know, verbal ads to stuff. And it's like, wow, it is half the show is ads. And I forgot to hit that ad button through this whole live stream. Shame on me. If you can, don't forget you can send in super chats, but if you want to give a one-off payment, the PayPal link in the description box below is a little bit better. Frodo is in the room. Frodo, baby, come here. Frodo. He's not coming over here. He is my anchor right now. I need that cat in my life. But here, another little good thing before we leave. There's Abernathy and Lanier on my lap earlier today as I wanted to get up to start prepping for this. Because Abernathy will come onto my lap and Lanier's like, no, without me. And he'll wedge himself, like just wedge himself in there between us. But the two of them love each other, so it's great that they get along so well. Anyway. Oh. Frodo, are you going to come in here? People would love to see you. He's been puking up a lot of hairballs lately. I hope it's just hairballs and nothing else. Yeah, so lots of other leftist programming on tonight. I think I'm going to stick to this 5 o'clock live stream time for during the week live streams and also Sunday live stream. It does come on the tail end of the surfs. I realize that. And it does bleed into others. So I'm kind of in this weird middle ground. It would help if I make them more concise. That's probably not going to happen. Anyway, I need to eat something, get a little fuel in me before I go out for my walk. Which I desperately need for my own mental health. Okay, so why don't I do my sign off, and also just a reminder to everyone to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, be kind to others, be kinder to yourself. Something that Michael Brooks used to say. Just at the last moment. We got a Frodo. Oh, hey, baby. He doesn't like it when I actually hold him like this. He just wants to nudge my hand while he's standing on the ground. Hey, say hi to everyone. Yeah, I won't keep you up there. Okay. We got a Frodo. Yeah, he is the most amazing cat in the world. Anyway, I was about to sign off when I got interrupted by a kitty cat. Aw, thank you, Donald James, for the $2 for Frodo. Yeah, it was because of all the wonderful generosity from this community that I was able to get his vet bills paid off earlier. He's the most expensive thing I've ever bought, but he's worth every penny. Hopefully I don't have to take him back to the vet for quite some time. He's going to live till he's 30. Okay. So, let's do this. Salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.